When Vladimir Putin ordered his tanks into Ukraine in February 2022, he expected a swift, triumphant victory. The world watched in disbelief as columns of Russian armor thundered across the border, a show of force meant to intimidate and overwhelm. Putin's confidence was rooted in years of military buildup and a belief that Ukraine would crumble quickly, unable to resist the might of Russia's war machine. As the invasion began, international news outlets broadcast images of chaos and uncertainty. Across Europe and beyond, people braced for Ukraine's collapse, fearing a humanitarian disaster and a new era of instability. Governments scrambled to respond, and the world held its breath, expecting Kyiv to fall within days. But the opposite happened. Ukraine's military, hardened by years of conflict in the Donbas, fought back with unexpected ferocity. Soldiers and volunteers alike took up arms, defending their homeland with determination and skill. Their resistance stunned both Russian commanders and international observers, shattering the myth of Russian invincibility. Instead of fracturing under pressure, Ukrainian society united as never before. Across cities and villages, civilians rallied to support the war effort, making camouflage nets, delivering supplies, and raising morale. The blue and yellow flag became a symbol of defiance and hope, inspiring millions around the world. Now, in December 2025, the war's narrative has flipped entirely. Russia's military, once feared and respected, is battered and exposed. Images of destroyed tanks and abandoned equipment litter the Ukrainian countryside, a stark contrast to the grand parades once held in Red Square. The invasion has laid bare deep corruption and incompetence within Russia's armed forces. Leaked videos show demoralized conscripts, poor logistics, and chaos in the ranks. High-ranking officials have been arrested for corruption, further eroding trust in the Kremlin's leadership. Rather than breaking Ukraine, Putin's war has forged a stronger national identity and revitalized NATO. Western nations, once divided, have united in support of Ukraine, providing weapons, aid, and political backing. The alliance is stronger than it has been in decades, and Ukraine's sense of unity has never been greater. Putin's gamble has left Russia isolated and weakened on the world stage. Sanctions have crippled the economy, international partnerships have dissolved, and ordinary Russians face shortages and uncertainty. The consequences of this war ripple far beyond the battlefield, reshaping global alliances and power structures. This story is a powerful lesson in how authoritarian hubris can lead to self-destruction. History is filled with leaders who overreached, blinded by ambition and pride, only to bring ruin upon themselves and their nations. In this series, we'll explore how Russia's once mighty military machine was crippled, the devastating economic fallout, and the shifting global order that has emerged from the conflict. The consequences are profound, affecting not just Russia and Ukraine, but the entire world. The war in Ukraine is more than a regional conflict. It is a defining moment for 21st century security, a turning point that will shape the future of Europe and the world for years to come. The roots of this war stretch back to Russia's 2014 annexation of Crimea and the eruption of conflict in the Donbas region. These events marked a turning point as Moscow began to openly challenge Ukraine's territorial integrity and sovereignty. The world watched as Russian troops moved into Crimea, and unrest spread across eastern Ukraine, setting the stage for a much larger confrontation. Vladimir Putin's narrative denied Ukraine's right to exist as an independent nation, fueling his obsession with restoring what he saw as Russia's historical sphere of influence. He spoke of reuniting Russian lands, framing the conflict as a mission to correct the so-called injustices of the past. This vision was broadcast relentlessly on Russian state media, shaping public opinion and justifying aggressive moves. In early 2022, Russia massed over 150,000 troops at Ukraine's borders, staging one of the largest military buildups in Europe since World War II. Despite mounting evidence, Russian officials insisted that an invasion was not imminent, dismissing Western warnings as hysteria. Yet, behind the scenes, the Kremlin was preparing for a lightning strike, convinced that Ukraine would collapse quickly. The Kremlin expected Kyiv to fall within days. Their plan hinged on a rapid decapitation strike. President Zelensky would flee, the Ukrainian government would dissolve, and the world would be forced to accept a new reality dictated by Moscow. Russian planners believed that shock and awe would paralyze resistance and that Ukraine's leaders would abandon their posts. Many analysts and commentators echoed this belief, predicting Ukraine's defeat within 72 hours. Headlines around the world speculated about the fall of Kyiv and the swift end of Ukrainian independence. The odds seemed stacked against Ukraine, and few expected the country to withstand the onslaught. But the Kremlin's plan unraveled almost instantly. Russian columns advancing toward Kyiv were ambushed in forests and villages. Their supply lines broke down, and confusion spread among the invading troops. Ukrainian resistance was far fiercer and more organized than Moscow had anticipated, turning the roads to Kyiv into graveyards for Russian armor. Western-supplied anti-tank weapons, like the Javelin and NLAW, devastated Russian armored vehicles. Shipments of military aid poured in from Europe and the United States, giving Ukrainian defenders the tools they needed to hold the line and inflict heavy losses on the invaders. Ordinary Ukrainian civilians joined the fight, blocking roads with their cars, building barricades, and using smartphones to report enemy movements in real time. Their courage and resourcefulness turned every town and village into a potential stronghold of resistance. President Zelensky's refusal to evacuate Kyiv became a symbol of defiance. Appearing in military gear on the streets, he rallied his people and inspired the world. His message was clear: "I need ammunition, not a ride." This determination galvanized Ukrainian society and drew admiration from across the globe. The myth of a quick Russian victory died outside Kyiv. Russian forces, expecting a parade, instead faced disaster and retreat. Ukrainian soldiers celebrated their unexpected success, proving that the Kremlin's assumptions were fatally flawed. Instead of submission, Ukraine's defiance became a rallying cry. Across the world, people took to the streets in solidarity, waving Ukrainian flags and singing the national anthem. Landmarks from Paris to Sydney were lit in blue and yellow, signaling global support for Ukraine's struggle. The world saw that Ukraine would not be conquered easily. International news coverage highlighted the bravery of Ukrainian fighters and civilians alike, while governments imposed unprecedented sanctions on Russia and sent aid to Kyiv. Putin's dream of a swift conquest was shattered. The Kremlin's illusions of an easy victory gave way to the harsh reality of a determined nation fighting for its survival and a world united in its support. By late 2025, the war has settled into a brutal and exhausting stalemate, with neither side able to achieve a decisive breakthrough. The once hopeful offensives have given way to a grinding war of attrition, where progress is measured in meters rather than miles, and every advance comes at a staggering human cost. Along Ukraine's eastern and southern frontiers, vast networks of trenches and fortifications now scar the landscape, stretching for hundreds of kilometers. These defensive lines, visible even from space, are a testament to the intensity and duration of the conflict. Artillery duels thunder day and night, with both sides unleashing relentless barrages. Trench warfare has returned on a scale not seen in Europe for generations, while drones, both for surveillance and attack, buzz constantly overhead, turning the battlefield into a deadly chessboard. Russia, having abandoned its initial ambitions of a swift victory, now fights desperately for every inch of ground in the Donbass. Each minor advance is paid for with heavy losses, as Ukrainian resistance remains fierce and unyielding. According to Ukraine's Ministry of Defense, Russian casualties have soared past 500,000, a staggering figure that underscores the war's brutality and the high price of Moscow's persistence. The battlefield is littered with the twisted remains of thousands of Russian tanks and armored vehicles, silent witnesses to the ferocity of the fighting and the effectiveness of Ukraine's defenses. Ukrainian forces, bolstered by advanced Western-supplied precision weapons, strike deep behind enemy lines. HIMARS rocket systems and cruise missiles target Russian supply depots, command posts, and logistics hubs, disrupting Moscow's ability to sustain its offensive. At sea, Ukrainian naval drones have forced Russia's once dominant Black Sea fleet to retreat from its bases in Crimea, leaving key ports damaged and the Russian Navy on the defensive. Despite Russia's massive efforts, its territorial gains remain minimal and come at enormous cost. Meanwhile, Ukraine continues to launch targeted counteroffensives, reclaiming ground and keeping Russian forces off balance. The front lines are constantly shifting, with both armies adapting their tactics, rotating exhausted units, and training new recruits in the harsh realities of modern warfare. The war has become a bloody, shifting stalemate. No man's land is a muddy, cratered expanse, and soldiers on both sides endure unimaginable hardship, fatigue, and loss as they wait for a breakthrough that never comes. The cost in lives and materiel is immense. Entire towns lie in ruins. Field hospitals overflow with wounded, and military cemeteries grow longer by the day, a stark reminder of the war's relentless toll on both nations. Western sanctions aim to cripple Russia's economy and war machine. Despite initial resilience, Russia's economy is now a hollowed-out war engine. Sanctions have cut off access to Western technology, crippling advanced weapons production. Civilian industries are starved, inflation soars, and labor shortages bite. Russia is forced to rely on outdated tanks and foreign-supplied drones. The IMF projects years of stagnation and decline. Sanctions haven't stopped the war, but they've forced Russia to fight with obsolete tools. The economic toll is deep and lasting. The war's true cost is measured in shattered lives. Ukrainian cities like Mariupol and Bakhmut have been obliterated. The UN confirms over 15,000 civilian deaths, with millions displaced. Civilians recount weeks hiding in subways, fields mined, and livelihoods destroyed. Russian society, too, is scarred. Hundreds of thousands fled mobilization, and families grieve in silence. Wives and mothers of soldiers demand answers, their voices growing louder. Both nations face a lost generation, Ukrainian children traumatized, Russian youth consumed by war. The social fabric is torn by one man's ambitions. The scars, physical and psychological, will last for generations. This is a war of survival, not just territory. The human toll is incalculable. The world cannot look away. Putin's invasion backfired diplomatically, uniting and expanding NATO. Finland and Sweden joined the alliance, extending NATO's reach. Russia is more isolated than ever, with few allies beyond pariah states. Even China keeps its distance, wary of sanctions and Russia's failures. The EU now uses frozen Russian assets to fund Ukraine's defense and reconstruction. Diplomatic efforts stall as Russia refuses to withdraw or compromise. Ukraine insists on full territorial restoration. With no common ground, the diplomatic front is frozen. Russia is cornered, with no easy exit. The myth of Russian military might has collapsed. Analysts agree. Putin's hubris, corruption, and propaganda doomed the invasion. Russia's military was hollowed out by graft, outdated equipment, poor logistics, and weak leadership. The invasion plan ignored reality, sending unprepared troops into disaster. Russian forces lacked coordination and effective non-commissioned officers. Ukrainian troops, agile and motivated, quickly adapted to Western tactics and gear. Putin started a war without preparing his army or society for the cost. Russia's losses in men and materiel will take a decade or more to recover, if ever. Instead of proving Russia's strength, Putin exposed its limits. The world now sees the Russian military as a shadow of its former self. The war has transformed European and global security. Europe is rearming. Germany, Poland, and the Baltics are boosting defense. NATO is revitalized, its eastern flank reinforced, and the Baltic Sea now a NATO lake. The conflict deepens divides between democracies and authoritarian states. Food and energy insecurity ripple worldwide. The threat of escalation, even nuclear, is real. Great power competition is no longer theory. It's today's reality. Ukraine's resistance is a testament to the power of a united people. The war proves military might alone can't crush a nation's will to be free. Ukraine has forged a new identity and inspired the world. Russia, meanwhile, is weakened, isolated, and set back a decade. The outcome will shape global security for generations. A Russian victory would embolden autocrats everywhere. A Ukrainian victory reaffirms the right of nations to choose their destiny. The world must keep supporting Ukraine, militarily, economically, and morally. This is not just Ukraine's fight, it's a battle for freedom and international law. The war's outcome depends on our continued resolve. Ukraine's struggle is the front line of a global fight for the future.